Hey, Canucks fans, I am back and I'm thrilled to be speaking to. He's not the biggest media guy, he's not a superstar, but he is a very close friend of mine, someone I've known for 2 decades. We've played on the same roller hockey team, we've gone to the same church. He's been Michael Jackson in my parody video. So you know that this guy has a good sense of humor, but most importantly, just like you, just like me, he is an avid Canucks fan and he's huge passion for this team and he cares about the future of this team. So that's what I'm going to talk about with my friend Charly Pimentel. Charly, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. The show that you have gets a lot of viewership, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to have this platform for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I know we were texting and I said, no pressure, just look good and know that there's going to be a few hundred people watching this by the time we're done. So
yeah.
So tell us a bit about you, your family life, professional, and we'll save the Canucks fandom for a few minutes from now. But tell us about yourself, Charly.
Sure. Yeah. So and like you mentioned, we've known each other for a while, family, friends, right? We've gone to the same church. You know, my wife and I moved to Vancouver 10 years ago, so we don't go to the same church anymore, right? I go to St. Pat's now. But I'm a teacher. My wife's a teacher. I work at a school in West Van, and I teach English and new media. So I do have some media experience in that respect. Yeah. Also, you mentioned rollers. We haven't played in 2 years, and I'm glad to see that Jason's trying to get the group back.
Are you joining?
I emailed him back and said I'm definitely interested, and I just kind of have to think about it more and see when it approaches closer. How about you? Are you joining?
Yeah, you know what's funny? I said to Jason, I said, I can give you one of two answers. One answer is going to make me get in better shape. The other answer is going to make your team better. Which one do you want?
So what is it? Are you going to?
I miss it. I want to, but I always, it's funny, Charly, I always joke around on this channel how I'm the 47-year-old dad who everyone just leaves alone because yeah, they know that I'm not trying to upstage anyone. I'm just trying to get my exercise and trying not to get hurt. Right. That's kind of like my MO. You are 10 years younger than me and much in better shape. And you're a little bit more feisty than I am on the roller hockey rink, I think.
Yeah, but I think you lead the team in blocked shots. I think.
Well, that's because I can't get out of the way.
No, I miss it as well. I'm excited to get back into it. There's just the nerves about COVID and sports I think working at a school though has socialized me back into the world a lot easier than a lot of people who've had to stay home, right? So I'm lucky I'm around people all the time. So, but yeah, I think I will join. I think
awesome. That's an excellent point. So yes, your family actually was very close to Gail's family. That's how I met you. And then we were serving at the same church, same roller hockey team. Also, you've been in at least 2, if not 3 of my parody videos. You were in our NSYNC Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas one. And then you were Michael Jackson when we did our tribute to Willie Desjardins.
Yeah, Willie D. That was funny. Yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that video. I remember though that I think Joe San Jose was in that video as well. And I remember that we were recording into the night, and I kept screwing up, and after a while it was I could see that he was kind of getting annoyed. Okay, come on, let's finish this already. I don't know if that was the NSYNC one or the
Michael Jackson. The NSYNC we were in the middle of the day, and there were 10 guys. No, it was the Michael Jackson one.
That was fun though.
I'm going to link that one, Charly, down below in the description, because it's still my kid's favorite video. It's the production value stinky, our lyrics just okay, the singing just okay, but your Michael Jackson impression no, I shouldn't say that, spot on. So I will link that for everyone to watch later.
Thank you. You mentioned how we known each other since I was little. One of my first memories with you was actually a hockey related memory. I think it was in Gail's house for a prayer group, and we were playing footy, with a little ball and our feet
in the hallway, right?
Yeah, in the hallway. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yes, you were very nimble. I was still bigger than you and older than you, so I think you respected me a little bit, not plowing through me. But yes, that was fun. So the reason why I bring you on here, Charly, is not only are you very talented and you're a good sport, but you're very articulate too. And I'm not just saying this to butter you up. I know whether we talk about sports, religion, politics, social, pop culture, you have a really good way of expressing yourself. So I want to give you the freedom in this space to do that. Don't hold back, and let's just create some conversation. We might agree, we might disagree, but really this is more about your opinions. People on the channel, they know my opinions all the time. I'll add in a little bit, but I really want this to be about you. But before we get to the Canucks proper, you told me that you, as a good friend of mine, you actually met Boeser and tried to find out if he actually knew me.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't meet him, and that wasn't wasn't the MO when I met him.
Right.
Like, I gotta find out if he knows Clay. It just came up. But so my wife and I were biking the seawall, and this is like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And we were biking, and I see maybe 50 yards away, 2 people, their backs, not even their fronts, their backs, and then their dogs. And I knew right away by their shape and their silhouette that it was Troy Stecher and Brock Boeser. And I immediately brake the bike. I stopped the bike, and I tell my wife, I'm looking from behind the bushes, and I'm like, that's Brock Boeser and Troy Stecher. I have to say hello. So I go over, and this is like in the seawall in Yaletown. I go over to them, and I just introduce myself and say I'm a huge fan, super fan. My wife comes slowly afterwards, kind of like hesitant and shy. And I tell them that, you know, I'm a seasoned member. I never miss any games. And so we get to talking about a lot of things, but I guess I'm nervous obviously. And I decide to name drop Clay Emu and Marie Huey. And I say, oh yeah, I'm also friends with Marie and Clay. I don't know if you know of them. I'm sure, you know, she's the anthem singer, and then he makes all those YouTube videos, and they're like, oh yeah, no, we don't know them, but we know of them. And I was able to break the ice with that, but they were really nice. Like, we talked for like 10-15 minutes.
Awesome.
And Stecher was like talking about Richmond and where he lived, and he lived like around where we all lived in Richmond growing up. And
yeah,
anyway, yeah,
that's a pretty cool story. Not for the name drop, but rather that you were able to engage with them and hold your own. Because honestly, man, a lot of these guys, sure, it's nice. They like the adulation that comes with being a highly paid, highly respected, highly adored athlete. But a lot of times, and we're not their peers, but they just like to have a normal conversation. What are you guys doing this weekend? How are things going with your family? That kind of stuff. And it sounds like you did that.
A little bit, yeah. And then we took a photo, and they're the reason I'm on Instagram, because I was never on Instagram, but I took that photo. I'm like, I got to post this.
Nice.
So
Nice.
that's the first post I did on Instagram 4 years ago.
Love it. And you mentioned season ticket member. You still a season ticket holder right now, Charly?
Yeah, quarter season, but yeah, okay. I am. I've been I think I got my ice pack, they called it back then, or quarter seasons.
Yeah.
I don't know, almost like 5 years ago or so. It was when Lyndon was still at the helm.
Yeah. So before 2018, then. Yeah. Before he left. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Lyndon was new at it, because I think they just revamped like the concourse and made the food better and the drink selection better and all that better. And that was a real draw as well. Because I know the Canucks weren't doing well that time. But, yeah.
That was a good time to get in. So this is pretty cool, because we're recording this, just so everyone knows, we're recording this on Monday, Family Day Monday, after the Ducks game on Saturday, but before the Kraken game on Monday night. And then this will, as you're watching this, it's likely Wednesday as you're watching this. So just the context that you have there. We don't know what's going to happen tonight. Hopefully a Canucks win. And I love it, Charly, because sometimes you're at a game or I'm at a game, and then I'll get like a 7-text tirade from you with no gaps, good grammar and decent spelling, but you just go nuts, man. You're like, why don't they play OEL on the second, not the first power play unit? Or why don't they split up, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to let you open. So we have a good 25 minutes to talk about the Canucks now. What do you want to open with? What's on your heart right now, Charly?
Well, I think the chatter that's been happening over the past few weeks has definitely been who to trade and who to keep, right? Yeah. And I've been digging into that a lot. I think I just want to give just some context before even getting into that. Like I am a super fan, right? Like I watch every game. Even if I can't watch it on time, I'll record it and then not look at social media or let anyone tell me what happened, and I'll watch afterwards.
And not skim through, you actually watch it.
No, yeah, I'll watch everything. The only time that I might skim through is in our penalty kill, if I'm in a bad mood, because it's like, the chances of getting scored on is ridiculous.
And sadly, sometimes you don't have to skip that much. You only have to skip about 20 seconds. They score and then back to normal.
Yeah. But no, so I'm super invested in that sense. That's what I'm trying to say here, is that and when I watch, I'm not just watching passively. I'm watching it like I'm studying it and analyzing it. And I do that better when I'm watching alone and at home. Mm-hmm. But I find that I've gotten way too emotionally invested, that I do end up getting, crazy and sending texts like what you just said. And I feel like, when I do watch it at the arena and I watch it with other people, it's more of the social event, and I am as into it, but the emotions are dispersed among many other people. So it's way less of this mood swinging experience. But so as someone who gets that into it, I also like to read a lot about them. It's a part of like a routine where I'll just Google Canucks every day and read different things about them all the time, and listen to Sportsnet 650 on my way to work and on my way home. And
don't you call into it once in a while too?
Yes. I mean, sometimes I called in last week, and that's what I was getting at, is that the last few weeks has been just chatter about who to trade and who to keep. And it's really polarizing. There's just so many different perspectives and opinions on different players and whether their value is on ice with us or as assets to trade. And I think the main ones have been JT Miller and Brock Boeser, and now most recently Bo Horvat has entered that conversation. So I kind of have a few takes on that.
I'd love to hear, man. That's a great setup, Charlie, because I was glad how you were able to not only explain your fandom, but that you're a true student of the game. Didn't necessarily play it to a high level, but you can talk it, you can play it, you understand coaching strategy, you understand contracts, you understand it all. And it's funny that you mentioned the big three, because we know, and this is what we're going to talk about. We know that Brock Boeser is an RFA who expires this season. We know that Horvat and Miller are UFAs expire next season. But the biggest thing is all these guys are in line for anywhere between $7 to $8.5 million, depending on term. So I think that's why it's such an important conversation for this team right now. So the floor is yours.
Well, I don't want to monopolize the entire conversation. I wouldn't say that I know it all, really. Like I'm learning all the time. And I also have to acknowledge I have so much bias too, in favor of certain players and against other players. I mean, I think many fans know that because guys like Bo Horvat and Brock Boeser, came up with the team, it's harder to let those guys go. Right. And we have that emotional bias and connection, let alone me. I met the guy, but so I've actually also met or ran into Horvat once, but we can talk about it another time. But yeah, so I think, I don't know where I want to start, whether with Miller or with Boeser, but I think I can start by just asking you, because I think this will prompt me, is what do you think? Do you think Miller has value as a trade asset or as someone to keep? Which one do you and then the same thing for Boeser?
Yeah, fair question, Charlie. And people who watch me know that on Miller specifically, I flip-flopped a lot, because I understand, I'm smart enough to recognize that you could argue he gets you the most or close to the most trade assets in return. And we've heard all this from teams. It's got to be 4 assets. A roster player or 2, plus a pick, plus a prospect. That's a big haul. And I get how attractive it is, because someone could trade for him now and get him for 2 playoff runs on a pretty sweet deal of $5.25 million. I get all that. And then I see him play, put up 3 points, be the emotional and physical leader of the team. I'm like, why would you get rid of this guy when you trade him away? That's exactly the kind of guy that you want in your team. So then I'm saying, no, we got to keep him. Then I flip flop and say, but wait a sec, if he's only going to be in his prime for 2 or 3 years, more, and then we want to be really good in 2 or 3 years, are those timelines going to intersect? So I'm always back and forth on Miller. With Boeser, I'm biased to him too. I like him a lot. That's why his picture is always up on my right side there. And I get that the 7.5 isn't ideal. I get that in some aspects he's got all the leverage, and that he definitely doesn't have to sign anything until he's ready. But I look at his age, and I look at not even where he was drafted. I just look at his age and what he can be when he's on top of his game, and it makes it hard for me to part with him. But I am worried about this contract negotiation. So I'll set it up that way. With Miller, I flip-flop. With Boeser, I lean towards keeping him, but I am worried about the contract situation.
No, I love those points, and I have stuff to say about all of them. I think you ending with Boeser is a good transition. I think we the fans and media here in Vancouver, I think, really undervalue Brock Boeser. I think he's a very underrated, undervalued player, and I think to evaluate his value and to determine whether he should be traded or kept, we have to try to look at him as objective as possible. And I know, like we've acknowledged, we have these biases. So what I tried to look into are just facts about Boeser. You mentioned his age. He's 24, turning 25 at the end of this week. And then some key stats I think that really stand out is that he's been the top scorer on the Canucks for 2 of the last 4 seasons, not including this one. I think he has like around 238 points or 237 points in 296 games or something like that. That's around that's about 80%, like 0.8 per game, right? He's top 12 among all right wingers in the league when it comes to points per game over the last 3 seasons. And that's not including his exemplary rookie season. That's including this season. And so top 12 among all right wingers in points per game.
By the way, Charlie, I love the use of the word exemplary. That I've never used it before. That was pretty impressive.
I think as teachers, as a teacher, we use that to when we're evaluating someone with a high A. He's also top 15 in the league last year when it came to puck battle win percentage. So that's a really interesting stat. It's actually one of the most important stats, I think, is like winning puck battles. He's top 15 in the entire league in that. And a lot of people think of him as soft and that he doesn't get into the gritty part of the game, but he's in top 15 in the league with the likes of like Crosby and Couturier and Getzlaf and Bergeron in winning puck battles and board battles. And then when you look at something called, I don't know if it's casually called this, but with or without you stats, when you look at how they are with their line mates. This is from last year's stats. Pettersson's expected goals for dropped all the way to 35% when he wasn't with Boeser. And I think they were like at 50 something when they're together. And then you look at Boeser's stats, expected goals for dropping without Pettersson doesn't drop that much. He still stays above average on the team. And then Miller's expected goals for sank almost 10% without Boeser. And Boeser is actually higher without Miller. So in other words, I think he's the type of player based on the stats that makes his teammates better, right? The presence of him on a line makes his teammates more productive. And he's only rarely been in the negative in terms of like possession, expected goals, and any other measure of on-ice control. Now, when you consider those numbers, it suggests that he's a top-line scorer. I think it suggests that he's tough and strong on the puck and uses his body a lot more than the eye test suggests. And I think the eye test is really what's been used to judge a lot of him. And I think it's this false impression that people got about him that he's this, one-dimensional pure goal scorer because of his first season. But I think he's developed into so much more than that. I think like these stats also suggest he makes his line mates more productive and better. So now the question then becomes, does that make him more valuable as a trade asset or as someone in your team? And I know I haven't talked about contract, and you mentioned that he is up for a 7.5 qualifying offer. Now, do all those things make him worth 7.5? I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. I don't think necessarily that it does. I don't think we necessarily need to pay him 7.5, though. I think if we extend his contract and do long term, we can get him at lower than that. It'd be great if we can get him for 6.5. And I think the driver behind the conversation of trading Boeser is the idea that if we cannot keep both Miller and Boeser, then we need to trade Boeser and keep Miller. And a lot of the comparison's been that Boeser hasn't been as productive as Miller, or as productive as we'd like. He doesn't drive play as much as Miller, and he could potentially be overpaid in his next contract, which is approaching before Miller's does. So the argument is that if we can't keep both, then get rid of Boeser and trade him for assets. But I think that if we look at Miller's stats, right, I think, well, actually, sorry, before I go into Miller's stats, I think I want to point out something that I've looked at in Boeser's game in terms of production and productivity, because, that's the main criticism. If you look at 238 points in 297 games, that's 80%, right? So with the exception of a 10 to 12 game run this season, which has been an aberration, I think, for most of the Canucks, Boeser roughly gets 8 points every 10 games. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at game logs like throughout every season to see his patterns and trends. And there are only rare moments in his career when he goes more than 3 games without a point. So he's pretty consistent. I mean, I think that's why he's been top scorer for the last 2 out of 4 seasons, out of the last 4 seasons. So to consider him less valuable than Miller, I think there's an argument to be made against that, especially when you bring up age, like you mentioned. So here, this is where I want to go into Miller's stats. And
just before you do that, Charlie, one point I want to affirm you.
Yeah.
You make a really good point on Boeser making other teammates better. And, I saw the lines for tonight's game. Remember, we're recording this before a Seattle game, and they put Boeser with Horvat. And I on one hand, I thought that's weird. They don't really click well. And then when I listened to you say that, it might be Boudreau's way of getting Horvat going, not Boeser going. That's actually why I think they're doing it now that I hear you speak and think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah. Wow.
Boeser and Horvat, I think, played together a lot in his rookie season.
Yes.
And they did really well. Yeah. They did really well there, but we have to factor in that there's Thomas Vanek was on that line too. Thomas Vanek knew what to do too and how to make the plays. But
yes.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Horvat. He does seem very off, right? Like he seems inconsistent. He's not, he doesn't have that same jump. And when he does, he just the puck's off his stick, really quickly. He's just not able to maintain control. But yeah, I don't want to go on a tangent on Horvat right now.
No problem.
Miller. So here's the thing. Let's assume that Miller's next contract can be around 8 to 9 million.
Okay.
For 5 or 6 years.
Sure.
I think that's what a lot of the analysts have been saying. I was listening on the radio. They were talking in those numbers for Miller, that Miller could get 8 or 9 from the market in a somewhat long-term contract that takes him to the end of his career. Okay. So let's begin with the often agreed upon premise that this 28-year-old Miller is our best player. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to argue against it, because the stats show, raw number-wise, as an individual, he is our go-to guy, and he's the most productive. I think he has 169 points in 171 games in the past 3 seasons. That's elite, right?
Well, it is, and it's easy math for us too.
Yeah. And, so he's our go-to guy, and he scores the most. He plays in all situations, right? He's on the power play. He's in the penalty kill. He's at the top line. He's playing in the last minute of play to try to shut down the team. He's an OT. I think he leads the team in OT game winners, right? Or no, OT winners. I think not just the team. Didn't he tie one of the Sedins in the franchise or something like that?
Yeah, I heard something. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So I think his productivity is excellent. And in other words, I think we could say the fact that he's the go-to guy and plays in all those situations, that the Canucks' success and failure weighs heaviest on his performance. Would you agree? That like as someone who's on the ice for all situations, their success and their failure weighs heaviest on him. In other words, he bears a lot of that responsibility.
I agree with you. And as I hinted earlier, and I think you agree in both, not only the physical game, but the emotional and mental game too. I think a lot does hinge on him. Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. And are we a winning team? No. Do we have a good power play? I think it's pretty terrible. Our penalty kill, it's the worst in the league. Okay, it's the worst in the league. So as much as we praise Miller for his production and his ability to play in every situation, we need to evaluate him based on whether he's made our team better, whether he's actually made our team successful. And the fact is no, right? We're a losing team with Miller as our go-to guy. So
wow.
Right? Like why should we give an $8 to $9 million salary to this go-to guy? Why should we give a raise to our current go-to guy? Because he plays in all situations and is most productive? Well, I think the fact that he does and we're still losing suggests that he isn't good enough to be our go-to guy, worth giving a raise to. Like, why keep investing in him, especially at his age? Like, at best, he's going to give us this $8 million value production for the next 1 to 2, maybe 3 years. So I think we need to move on from him and find the next go-to guy. And here's the thing. I think we have them. They're the talented 23 to 26-year-old players on our roster. Boeser, Petey, Horvat, Garland. These guys can become what Miller is right now, productivity-wise.
Right.
With the new regime and the new coach, I think that they can definitely do that, and at way less of a cost than $8 million for 6 years or whatever Miller is going to get. You know, I think some reports are saying 8 years, 8 million, 8 years. You know, I think we should trust that in the next few years, this young core will produce to the level JT has been, but for contracts that are more reasonable because they haven't proven it yet. And I think that's the direction we need to go. We can't get players after they've proven it. Then they're super expensive, right? So, you know, contracts around like 6 to 6.5 for 5 to 6 years. You know, I think with inflation, that's similar to the contract we paid Miller, signed 4 years ago with Tampa, right? He got 5.25 4 years ago, and he was a 50-point player. That's like the guys we have now. They're 50-point players. Sign them at contracts similar to what Miller's getting now. With inflation, that's probably 6 to 6.5. And
you're right. And Garland's a perfect example of that. He makes 4.95 and he's going to be a 50-point guy. Yeah. You know, well, there's so much there to unpack and I know we can keep going, but I'm not just saying this, Charlie. I love how you use the argument or the reasoning of everyday situation player, jack of all trades. But I love how you turned it and said, okay, that's fair. But where has that gotten us? So when you texted me last week and when we were part of our regular exchanges and you said, I have a hot take, or I have a take that I think I haven't heard a lot of people say, or that you might like, if that's it, I really like it. I've always leaned this way with that argument that he's an everyday player. We need him. And I never went this way and say, where has that gotten us? And wow, I'm fascinated. I'm intrigued. I really am.
Well, thanks. No, that argument, that logic came to me actually years ago with another player when people were really talking up Alex Edler and how, you know, Alex Edler, we can't lose him. He's such a great player. He plays so many minutes and he's like the top D-man on our team. I'm like, yeah, but like we suck. So like what? Like that means that if he's our top D-man, that means we're going to continue not being that good, right? Like he's excellent as a middle six, right? Like you know what I mean? Like the middle pairing, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the top guy. And you could see how much, our productivity changed once Hughes came in, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, like that's where I thought of the logic that where people make the argument that, oh, he's this player like Miller he's the most productive, he plays in every situation. Yeah, but like hockey is this synergistic team sport where you need to be a guy that elevates the rest of your team. Right.
Right.
And I mean, I look at other teams who have superstar players where they put so much money into these top line guys, and some of these teams are not that successful.
Oilers.
I think there's I think there's only a few guys in the league who really deserve those top contracts. Yeah. And I think you could only have one or two in your team. Right. We've already decided that Petey and Hughes are those. So we can't give Miller that too. And more. It's going to be more. Yeah. And he's already older, right? We've decided Petey and Hughes are going to be that. So yeah. I mean, I think those contracts are death. Those big contracts that players often get from 28 to 30. Like, Louis Eriksson, for example, right? Like, they should be reserved for young franchise players. Like Miller isn't that. And to be honest, I'll concede neither is Bo nor Boeser, which is why I think they should get 6 to 6.5. And if Miller wants that to stay at 6 to 6.5, awesome. But fine, but not for long term, which I don't think he would take. And wow. I think Canucks fans and Canucks need to come to terms with the fact that, we don't have a lot of guys worth more than 7.5 million. And that's okay. We shouldn't feel the need to hand out those contracts, especially to 28-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And I think you can apply the situation or this to most situations. So like when Boeser, Horvat, Petey, Garland, when they reach 28 to 30 and want bigger contracts, no, trade them. Even if they do amazing in the years preceding. So even if they do end up living up to this expectation and they do amazing, when they get to 28 to 30 and they want another big contract, you cannot give it to them because they're just going to be in the decline, right?
Right.
Buy low, sell high, right?
Yes.
And find or develop the next go-to guy, right, as opposed to pay for the go-to guy after he's given us everything already.
So the argument here, Charlie, then would be everything we said about Miller being the go-to guy, but look where it's got us, plus his age, plus the fact that he's going to want this big contract, plus the fact that we could get a king's ransom for him now would lead one to suggest it might be the wise move to trade JT Miller.
Yeah, no, I think so. The one thing that I guess that an argument against that is that 5.25, which is what he's getting right now, trading him is clearing up that much, and it's not that much. 5.25 is not like a whole lot. And you'd obviously be getting a couple guys back and maybe a draft pick. And so one of those guys is probably going to take some of that 5.25.
Right.
But I think most of the factors point towards, I think he is better as an asset for us. And I think the biggest factor is his age. Like he's at 28, going to be 29 next month. And, so by the time next year comes along and trade deadlines coming along, GMs are saying, oh, this is a 30-year-old player. They're not thinking 28 or 29 anymore. They're thinking he's a 30-year-old player. They're going to be less likely to want to trade for him next year.
Right.
And I think right now he's at his prime, his peak, actually. I think he's at his peak and in value. We could keep him and he'll continue to produce for us. Will we have success with that? I don't think so, especially if we need cap space to make our team better. And then I have a few eye test points that I want to make about Miller too.
Sure.
Other people have said this too. And you were talking about him being that emotional sort of leader. Yeah, he does play with a lot of emotion, but I think it gets the better of him way too often. And he stops skating, his line changes are horrendous. I sometimes am watching and I'm so upset that I'll pause the game, rewind, and then record on my phone the clip of him
coasting,
a bad line change or coasting, just because I want all this evidence to show, look at Miller, why, we praise him so much, but there's these things that he does, like the coasting, the line changes, he gives up on plays. I think that if the play doesn't have to do with him, he's not in it as much. Like he's very like a self-centered player in that way. And I don't mean that like a judge of his character. It's more like just the way he is on the ice. I think he's like tunnel visioned in that way. And that can be good. I think a player like that and with his emotion and his skill can be good, but not as the go-to leader of the team, right? I think he's a guy that can get us points and play in different situations, but like, I wouldn't pay him like the go-to player in the team. I think that a lot of, I watch him and Brock Boeser play together a lot. And I get this sense, and I think the numbers back it up, that Boeser doesn't get as many opportunities when he's playing with Miller. He has to adapt and play more on like he's watching the play and seeing where he can put himself to get to be optimal. And I don't think he gets the puck as much.
As opposed to being a play driver himself.
Yeah, or playing with guys that just, I don't know, pass more and play more with him, right? Like Miller holds that puck way too long sometimes, and then he just loses the puck. I think he does. I looked it up. He leads the team at the forwards in giveaways on the Canucks for the past 3 seasons, and he doesn't have more takeaways than giveaways. He has more giveaways, and yeah, I there's those things about Miller that kind of really irk me, that that I think make him less valuable on ice for us than we realize. I know I'm not going to get a lot of agreement with a lot of this, because I think the city really loves Miller and the points he gives, the raw point production that he gives us, right?
Yeah, no, maybe. I'm very curious actually to see what happens in the comment section, because I appreciate the people that subscribe and follow this channel, and they're all very bright, they're all very articulate, and who knows, you might get a lot of support and a lot of affirmation, not personally, I mean for your opinion. So yeah, we'll see. And people know on this channel that I kind of be back and forth, and I rarely talk about Horvat. I'm always talking about Miller and or Boeser. I don't know if you want to dig into Horvat for a couple of minutes, or if you want to keep it at those two. It's up to you, man.
Yeah, I mean, numbers wise, I haven't really looked into Horvat, so I don't know. Like, it would be all eye test, and it's funny though. There's a camp within the fans and the media that really rely heavily on eye test and don't really think much about numbers. Yeah, I've never understood that. I think, the numbers don't lie a lot of the times. I think the numbers are accumulation of many eyes looking and calculating things.
Many
right?
eye tests. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I don't understand how we don't put enough stock in it. I know when the Canucks made their 2011 run, they put so much stock in the numbers and the analytics and just getting the competitive advantage based on like numbers. And, successful teams do that, I think. I know that, the Pittsburgh Penguins, for example, they won 2 in a row with Rutherford, and Rutherford has said himself that he likes analytics, but he doesn't rely on it completely. But you got Malkin and Crosby, right? Right? Like, yeah, that could beat out the analytics, I think, a lot of the times, right? And But Horvat, okay. Well, I guess Horvat, I think the thing I think about right away is his playoff performance, right? Just how clutch he is. Mm-hmm. I think Horvat is a clutch player, and he's been like that ever since we drafted him. I think when we drafted him the year before, he won the juniors, he scored the winning goal. Like, it was a winning goal for his whatever league he was playing in. And it was an overtime goal. And that was like the highlight of his career at that point. And he's just been, I think, a clutch player in that respect, a big game player in that respect, right? So I know that we could say the same thing about Miller. Oh, he's a big game player, a clutch player. I mean, he had also, I think, 17 or 18 points in the playoffs. But I get the feeling that Miller actually, I think he actually messes up a lot more times in the big moments. I'd like to check out numbers on this, and if anyone has, it'd be great. But every time we've had an empty net and pulled our goalie, and Miller's on the ice, and Miller is quarterbacking or making the plays and the dominant person on the line for that shift, we lose it and we lose the game. And the times that we've tied the game with an empty net, Miller's might have been on the ice, but he hasn't been a primary factor in the play. Like he might have been someone who touched the puck and we passed it around really well and then scored. But when Miller takes the puck on his stick, he tries to do it just all on his own. And I think he does that way too much. And it doesn't serve us. Well, I think Horvat is more of a guy who creates more synergy around him, I think, and makes the team better in that sense. But again, that's eye test. I don't have numbers there that back that.
No, that's fair. I sprung that on you. No, I know, because I know we could sit here and chat here for a couple hours. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you on again between now and the trade deadline. And we can talk maybe about some of the, maybe kind of the more middle targets, the Pullmans, the Hamanniks, the Dickinsons, and the Pearsons and Garland, not even maybe Garland of the world, if that works for you. Because I want to keep this focus. I love the way that we touched on the big three that we kind of outlined at the very start. Mm-hmm. Does that work for you if I bring you on again?
Sure.
Yeah, between now and the trade deadline.
Yeah, I'd love to. I could also be on your Ask Me Anything. I'd love to get the engagement with viewers and see what they have to say about these points.
Okay, you know what we're gonna do then? Tell you what, I love it. I love it, and we've all heard it here. It's being forever immortalized on this chat. I'm gonna bring you into one of my live streams. Then we'll figure out because you're your teacher. I know you like to sleep early. Maybe not actually. So I'll bring you on one of the two, the Sunday or the Wednesday night late night ones, over the next few weeks before the trade deadline. And I think that'll be a great way for people to, now that they know you, they've got to know and hear you a little bit, then they can ask you real time. Would you be up for that?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. That'd be fun.
Oh, that's awesome. So Charly, let's do this before we go. Just what's your hope for this team in the short term from now into trade deadline, just overall?
Yeah. I think I'd like it if, well, obviously, I think everyone would love it if they make the playoffs, because I think playoff runs, even if they don't go far, are just really great for their experience. Now, I don't want that necessarily to determine them keeping Miller so that they make the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. If they can trade Miller for assets and for the future and to make cap space, then I would trade Miller if there's a really good deal for it. I don't want them to trade our younger guys, I think those guys are just on the up and up, right? Yeah. And I think this is, been a tough season, but I hope that they stay with Boeser and I guess to a less extent Horvat, but Boeser, for example, I just think once you trade him, that guy's going to do amazing elsewhere. Like he will. I think he's very underrated in that way. But stats wise, I think I'd like them to win 2 out of every 3 games. I think I'd be. I think that's reasonable. I think if they can stay at the pace that Boudreau's created in the last 25 games, that would be a pretty successful rest of the season. Now, if the numbers work out that leads to the playoffs, great. If it doesn't, it's still a successful second half of the season in that sense, I think, considering, who we have and who we don't have, what we still need to become. The other point I wanted to make about Miller was that he is leading the team in scoring by like a long mile, right? Like everyone else is just like so many points lower than him, right? He has the chunk of like most of the points. And I guess you could look at that and be like, well, then he's our best player and we should keep him and pay him more. I'm thinking, no, you need the rest of your team to be producing. The fact that he has such individual stats that are the successful stats, I don't think is indicative of like having a great player who elevates your team. It's very indicative of a guy who can get really good stats on his own. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's necessarily something that you want to keep when the rest of your team is not doing well. When we look at the past few seasons, the rest of the team, it hasn't performed as poorly as they're performing now, numbers wise. They've been better. So I don't think we can use just this season and their performance and their low numbers as indicative of we got to get rid of all of them and keep Miller. You know, I think that's the wrong way of thinking about it if you want to look at like a larger sample size and long term. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does. Naturally, you want to see not so big of a gap between your Miller and Hughes, but a team that's playing better, winning more games, and has got more guys with more average points than one guy up here, then Hughes, and then the rest of the guys kind of falling in behind. No, I know exactly what you're saying, and it speaks to exactly what you said about elevating how Boeser does and how others make teammates better. So thank you. When is the next game you're going to? Do you know?
I have tickets to the Montreal game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Start of March. Yeah. Okay. That sounds awesome. Well, Charly, thank you. Subscribers, leave a comment below. Give me your reaction to what Charly had to say. In a nutshell, he shared how we know each other. He shared about his fandom, and he's suggesting that Brock Boeser is the one to keep and JT Miller is the one to trade. That's really what it boils down to. And a lot of great supporting data and facts to back it up. So fans, subscribers, put in the comments below. Do you agree with Charly? And would you go with this route, or do you see how much JT Miller brings and you're saying, man, I just don't know how we can trade this guy? I know there's so many ways we can go, so many factors, but we love to hear your feedback down below. So of course, subscribe, like this video, and become a member of this channel, and certainly leave a comment down below. Any last words, Charly, for the Canucks fans out there?
No, just thank you, Clay. It was fun. Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening. I talked a lot and rambled a lot, but thanks for listening to all of it.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your passion for the team that I share, and we'll make sure that we get you on soon for one of the lives for sure.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks, Charly. God bless you, brother.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, thanks, man. Bye.